Imagine this. You're standing in a room full of people. There's laughter, chatter, the hum of music in the background, but none of it feels like it's for you. You're smiling, nodding, saying all the right things, but inside you feel like you're performing a role you never auditioned for. Every laugh feels rehearsed. Every word feels like it's been run through a filter. We've all been there. Maybe it's at work, maybe it's at school, maybe it's even with friends or family. The people who are supposed to know you best, and yet you feel invisible. Not because they can't see you, but because they don't see you. The real you. So, you play along, wearing masks that get heavier with every passing year. Most of us have been trained for this since childhood. We learned early that approval was survival. Fit in, be likable. Don't be too loud, don't be too quiet. So we edited ourselves. We hid the parts we thought would make others uncomfortable. We crafted a version of ourselves that would get the nods, the compliments, the validation we craved. And on the surface, it works. People smile, they like us, they approve. But deep down, you know something's wrong. Because no matter how much approval you get, it never feels like enough. You check your phone late at night, rereading a comment or a message that didn't quite sit right. You replay conversations in your head, wondering if you said the wrong thing, if they secretly judged you, if you should have done something differently. The approval you chased all day evaporates as quickly as it came, leaving you restless again. Arthur Schopenhauer understood this feeling centuries ago. He wrote that most people live as though they're on a stage, endlessly performing for an audience that may not even care. And this performance comes at a cost. We trade authenticity for acceptance, freedom for validation. We bend ourselves into shapes that don't fit, all for a kind of peace that never arrives. And maybe that's why you feel tired. Because living for their approval is like walking in shoes 2 sizes too small. You can do it, but every step hurts. Schopenhauer believed this is why so few people are truly free. Because they've tied their worth to the opinions of others. And in doing so, they've lost themselves. But here's the truth he discovered. Real peace doesn't come from applause, compliments, or fitting in. It comes from stepping off the stage entirely. It comes from letting go of their gaze and reclaiming your own life. That's hard to imagine, isn't it? Because for so long, we've been taught that approval is everything. But what if their opinions are just noise, loud, distracting, but meaningless in the grand scheme of your life? This video is about that truth, about the courage to let go, about the freedom Schopenhauer found when he stopped caring what others thought. And once you see it, you may never seek their approval again. Imagine if every choice you've ever made, your clothes, your career, even the way you laugh, was shaped by invisible hands. Not your own values, not your dreams, but the silent pressure of other people's expectations. Sounds extreme, right? But Schopenhauer believed this is exactly how most people live. We become experts at sensing what others want from us and molding ourselves to deliver it. We learn this so young that by adulthood, we don't even realize we're doing it. Think about it. How many times have you hesitated before posting something online, worried about what others might think? How often have you said yes when you wanted to say no, simply because you feared rejection? These small moments pile up, and before we know it, we're not living our own lives, we're living for applause. Schopenhauer described this as a kind of invisible prison, not one made of bars or chains, but of whispers, glances, and silent judgment. It's a cage we build ourselves, brick by brick, every time we value someone else's approval over our own peace. And what's worse is that this prison feels normal. We call it fitting in, being polite, or keeping the peace. But really, it's a slow erosion of who we are. And here's the part that makes it even more dangerous. Approval is addictive. The more we get, the more we crave. A compliment feels good, so we chase another. A like or a comment gives us a rush, so we change ourselves to get more. Slowly, we become a version of ourselves designed for others' consumption, not our own happiness. Schopenhauer warned that this endless pursuit of validation will never bring peace, because the world's approval is fickle. Today's applause is tomorrow's silence. Imagine performing on a stage where the audience is constantly changing. One day they cheer, the next they boo. And yet, you keep performing because you're terrified of what will happen if you stop. That's the life Schopenhauer saw so many people living, a life ruled by opinions rather than truth. But here's what makes his philosophy so radical. He believed that this prison is entirely self-imposed. The people whose approval you're chasing, they're often too busy chasing someone else's approval to notice yours. The critics you fear, they forget their own words faster than you do. We're terrified of judgment, but Schopenhauer argued that most judgment is shallow, fleeting, and meaningless. So why does it hold so much power over us? Because deep down, we want to belong. We want to be loved, and there's nothing wrong with that. But Schopenhauer believed that true belonging doesn't come from twisting yourself into someone else's ideal. It comes from embracing who you already are, without needing anyone's permission. Here's the paradox. The more you seek approval, the less authentic you become. And the less authentic you are, the harder it is to feel truly seen or loved. That's why no amount of likes, compliments, or attention ever feels like enough. Because deep down, you know it's not you they're approving of. It's the mask. Schopenhauer's warning wasn't meant to shame us. It was meant to wake us up, to remind us that a life built on approval is a life built on sand. No matter how carefully you construct it, one wave of disapproval can wash it all away. But what if you didn't need their approval to feel at peace? What if you could step off the stage entirely, take off the mask, and stop performing? Schopenhauer believed this was not only possible, but necessary for anyone seeking true freedom. Schopenhauer believed peace isn't something you win by convincing others. It's something you reclaim the moment you stop performing. And that realization changes everything. Imagine what it would feel like to wake up tomorrow and not care who approves of you. Not in a cold or rebellious way, but in a calm, grounded way. Like you finally exhaled after holding your breath for years. No second-guessing your words, no worrying about who's watching, no performing. Just you, breathing freely in your own skin. Schopenhauer believed this kind of peace is possible, but only if we're willing to stop measuring our worth through other people's eyes. He wrote that, "A man can be himself only so long as he is alone." To him, solitude wasn't loneliness, it was freedom. It was the space where we could strip away the roles we've been playing for so long and finally meet ourselves without the noise of judgment. Think about it. How many decisions in your life were made out of fear of disapproval? How many dreams did you shrink to avoid standing out? How much energy have you spent rehearsing conversations in your head, crafting perfect messages, or smiling when you didn't want to? That exhaustion isn't just emotional, it's spiritual. And Schopenhauer believed the only cure was to stop giving away your power to people who don't truly see you. But here's the surprising truth. When you stop seeking approval, you don't lose connection. You gain real connection. The right people are drawn to authenticity. When you stop bending to please everyone, the ones who truly resonate with you will stay. Not because of what you do for them, but because of who you are. That's the foundation of real relationships. This is why Schopenhauer placed so much value on solitude. It's not about rejecting people or becoming a hermit. It's about finding a space where you can exist without judgment. In solitude, you discover what matters to you, not to your parents, your friends, your coworkers, or the faceless crowd online, but to you. And once you taste that kind of freedom, going back to the endless chase for validation feels impossible. Now pause for a moment. Let this sink in. Maybe this resonates with you because you felt that quiet exhaustion. Maybe you've been carrying the weight of other people's expectations for so long that you forgot what it feels like to breathe for yourself. If that's true, I'd love for you to share your story in the comments. Not for me, not for numbers, but because your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear tonight. Sometimes just knowing that someone else feels the same way can be enough to make the world feel a little less lonely. Schopenhauer wasn't offering easy comfort, he was offering liberation. He believed most people will never find this kind of peace because they're too afraid of losing approval. But for those who dare to let go, the reward is priceless. A life that finally belongs to you. And that's the shift we're moving toward. A life where approval no longer controls you, where peace isn't given by others, but grows within you. But this journey isn't over yet, because what happens when you finally stop chasing approval is even more profound than you think. It changes the way you see yourself, and the way others see you too. Imagine walking into a crowded room and feeling completely at peace. Not because everyone admires you, but because it no longer matters if they do. Their glances, their whispers, their silent judgments. They're like leaves blowing past you in the wind. You smile, you breathe, and for the first time, you feel untouchable. Not because you're arrogant, but because you finally stepped off their stage. Schopenhauer believed this is the quiet power most people will never know, the strength of being free from approval. He argued that as long as we need others to validate us, we'll always be controlled by them. A single insult can ruin our day. A single compliment can dictate our mood. We become like puppets, our strings pulled by strangers, acquaintances, even friends. But when you let go of that need, something extraordinary happens. Their words still exist, but they no longer pierce you. Their rejection doesn't shake your core. Their praise doesn't define your worth. You stop being a puppet and start becoming a person, whole, steady, and free. Schopenhauer compared this shift to climbing a mountain. From below, you're surrounded by noise. The crowd's voices are loud. Every word feels personal. But as you climb higher, the voices grow faint. From the peak, you can still see the crowd, but their noise no longer reaches you. You see them clearly for the first time. People caught in their own struggles, seeking approval just like you once did. And instead of judging them, you feel compassion. You understand them because you were them. And that's the gift of this transformation. Freedom doesn't make you cold or detached. It makes you compassionate. When you no longer need their approval, you stop resenting their judgment. You realize most people aren't even thinking about you as much as you feared. They're too busy performing on their own stage, chasing their own applause. This realization gives you a sense of peace so deep, it's almost unshakable. You no longer walk into a room wondering if you're liked. You walk in wondering how to bring value, truth, or kindness. You stop editing yourself to be accepted and start being fully present. And in doing so, you attract something rare, genuine respect. Because authenticity has a gravity that approval chasing never will. But this kind of freedom comes with a price. It requires solitude, reflection, and the courage to face yourself honestly. Schopenhauer believed that most people avoid this work because it's painful at first. Silence is uncomfortable when you're used to noise. Sitting alone with your thoughts can be terrifying if you've spent your life drowning them out. But he argued that true strength is born in this stillness. It's the forge where your character is shaped, where your confidence grows roots so deep that no storm can shake them. And here's the irony. The moment you stop needing validation is the moment you start attracting it naturally. People are drawn to those who are grounded, steady, and unbothered by approval. They sense something rare in you, a quiet confidence that doesn't demand attention but earns it effortlessly. This is the paradox Schopenhauer saw so clearly. By letting go of the world's opinion, you rise above it. You don't become invisible, you become untouchable. But there's still one more truth to uncover, because as freeing as it is to escape their judgment, there's a deeper reason why this path feels lonely, even misunderstood. And understanding that reason might just change the way you see yourself forever. Imagine finally finding your own voice, only to realize how few people can truly hear it. You speak honestly, you live authentically, and yet, instead of applause, you're met with puzzled looks or quiet judgment. This is the cost of freedom. The moment you stop seeking approval, you step off the path that most people spend their entire lives walking. Schopenhauer believed this is why deep thinkers, sensitive souls, and those who seek truth often feel misunderstood. When you stop playing by society's rules, people who are still trapped by them won't know what to do with you. They might think you're cold, arrogant, or distant, but in reality, you're simply free. And freedom is something many people fear. Think about how most of us are raised. From a young age, we're taught to color inside the lines, to follow the crowd, to play the role expected of us. Approval becomes the currency of childhood, and we carry that currency into adulthood, trading our authenticity for acceptance. When you reject that system, when you stop caring what others think, you threaten the very foundation that so many people build their lives on. This is why Schopenhauer said solitude is not just a choice, but a necessity for those who want to live honestly. He believed that wisdom separates you from the masses, not because you want to be above them, but because you see life differently. You've stepped outside the performance, and once you've seen it for what it is, you can't go back to pretending. But this isn't a call to isolate yourself or become bitter. In fact, Schopenhauer's philosophy invites us to replace shallow approval with something far deeper: self-respect. When you stop living for applause, you start living for truth. You begin to measure your worth by your principles, your actions, and your inner peace, not by fleeting opinions. And here's the irony. This journey that begins in solitude often ends in connection. The more authentic you become, the more you attract people who truly resonate with you. Not because you're trying to impress them, but because authenticity has a quiet power. The friendships and relationships that grow from this place are fewer, but they're stronger. Still, there's no denying that the path of authenticity can feel lonely at times. Schopenhauer understood this deeply. He argued that most people prefer the comfort of illusions over the discomfort of truth. And when you choose truth, you will stand apart. But standing apart doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're awake. So if you've ever felt like you don't belong, like the world is speaking a language you can't quite understand, know this: you're not alone. You're simply ahead. You've stepped off the stage and chosen a different script, one that isn't written for an audience but for yourself. And that choice, as difficult as it feels, is the first sign that you're closer to peace than you realize. Schopenhauer's message was never meant to make us bitter or cynical. It was meant to make us free. He wanted us to see that true fulfillment doesn't come from being understood by everyone, but from understanding ourselves deeply. But here's the twist. Once you stop needing their understanding, once you stop seeking their validation, something beautiful happens. You stop being controlled by their perception, and you finally start to see the world and yourself clearly. Imagine a life where nothing anyone says can shake you, where a stranger's criticism rolls off your back, where a friend's approval no longer decides your happiness, where you don't need anyone's applause to feel whole. That's the kind of peace Arthur Schopenhauer believed was possible. Not a loud, flashy peace, but a quiet one. A steady, unshakable peace that feels like coming home to yourself. He saw that most people spend their entire lives chasing acceptance from others. From the moment we're children, we're taught to perform for approval. Smile when we're told, work for praise, follow the crowd. As adults, that chase doesn't stop. We measure our value through likes, compliments, promotions, and recognition. And yet, no matter how much approval we collect, the feeling of enough never arrives. Schopenhauer believed this is because approval is a mirage. It's never really about us. It's about the other person's expectations, their perspective, their shifting moods. To base our worth on that is like trying to catch water with our hands. No matter how tightly we hold on, it slips away. Real peace, he argued, is found not in applause, but in stepping away from the stage entirely. But this isn't easy. Letting go of approval feels like stepping into darkness at first. We've spent so long performing that taking off the mask feels vulnerable, even dangerous. Yet it's in this vulnerability that true strength is born. When you no longer live for their opinions, you begin to live for truth. You start to feel a calm confidence that doesn't depend on anyone's validation, a strength that's yours alone. Imagine this. You're sitting in a cafe, alone. Around you, conversations buzz, laughter fills the air, people glance your way. But you don't feel the need to shrink or perform. You're content. That's the kind of freedom Schopenhauer spoke of. Not isolation, but self-possession. It's not about rejecting people. It's about no longer being ruled by them. And here's the paradox. When you stop chasing approval, you often attract genuine respect. People are drawn to those who are grounded, steady, and authentic. It's not about arrogance. It's about presence. When you no longer need their validation, your energy changes. You become magnetic in a quiet, effortless way. The relationships you build from this place are fewer, but they're real. Still, this path isn't for everyone. Schopenhauer believed that most people would rather stay in the comfort of illusion than face the discomfort of self-discovery. Approval is a drug, and stepping away from it feels like withdrawal. But for those willing to walk that hard road, the reward is priceless. A life where you know who you are, regardless of who approves. Maybe as you listen to this, something inside you stirs. Maybe you're tired of the weight you've been carrying, the constant need to be liked, the fear of being misunderstood. Maybe part of you has been longing for this freedom all along. If that's true, share your story in the comments. Not for me, not for numbers, but because there's someone out there right now who feels exactly like you do. Someone scrolling in the dark, wondering if they're the only one. Your words could be the reason they feel less alone tonight. And if this message feels like a breath of fresh air, consider subscribing. Not for trends, not for noise, but for a space where depth matters, where your thoughts matter, and where you're reminded that you don't need the world's permission to live your truth. Schopenhauer once said that solitude is where we find ourselves. Maybe that's the secret most people will never discover. Peace isn't handed to you by others. It's claimed. It's found in the quiet moment when you decide that your worth isn't up for debate. That's the moment everything shifts. That's the moment you finally begin to live.